Hello learners, this is Habiba with Pedagogy of Social Sciences. The topic is Aims and Objectives of Learning Social Sciences with the subtopic Developing Learning Objectives and Features of Well-Developed Learning Objectives. In the previous class, we understood what is a learning objective. Learning objective is a predetermined statement to be achieved from the learners by the teacher. So let's understand now the learning objectives should be formulated in the light of the needs of the society, nature of the subject and the nature of the pupils. In selecting objectives, various criteria may be useful. Generally accepted criteria for statement of a good learning objectives are A. In line with the aim of education. The learning objectives should be in the aim of the education. What the education requirements are there, according to that learning objectives should be formulated. Next one, specific in terms of means and ends at a time frame. That means it should be in a time frame and it should have some means why we are creating these learning objectives. Certain aim must be there. Then useful for the student. Obviously the learning objectives are written for the sake of the learners or students only. Then pleasable for the application. Those learning objectives should be applicable. Then only they are perfect. Then Thurber and Collett have suggested the criteria for selecting objectives as number one, usefulness. The desired learning should have value in the lives of the students. Obviously, when you are teaching any particular topic, you are writing some learning objectives. That means the student will be able to understand climate. Otherwise, the student will be able to differentiate weather and climate. N number of examples are there. So, that usefulness should be there whatever learning objectives are created for particular topic. Then, timeliness, obviously. Learning should be concerned with familiar material with absolute desires and ideas. That means whatever ideas, what the teacher desires from the students, that should be written in timeliness and that material should be familiar to both. Then fitness. The learning should fit into a sequence, learning towards broader objectives. That means first simple specific objectives are written to achieve broader objectives and those should be fit and they should be in a sequence. Connection should be there so that the learners understand properly what the topic is taught to them. For example, they are taught any related to forest. First, they will be able to understand the meaning of forest, and the students will be able to know the different types of forest. The students will be able to understand the uses of forest. Then the students will be able to differentiate different kinds of forests. N number of learning objectives we can create, but it should be in a sequence. Then appropriate. The extent of expected learning should be coincide with the maturity and background of the people's concerns. That means according to the class level of the students, the learning objective should be written. Then practicability. Experiences needed for the development of learning should be possible. That means whatever learning objectives are written, practically they should be useful in future for the students when they enter into the real life. Learning objectives of social science should be consistent with the names of social science as well as cognitive abilities of the learners. Obviously, all the facts, principles and theories of social science cannot be learned by all learners, and there may be qualitative hierarchy in a different aspects of learning of particular learners and learners. So the teacher has to keep in mind the learners are in different levels. So according to those levels, those facts should be taught to the students. Example, a learner may be very good and expressing but not so in writing. You have to keep in mind the nature of social sciences in general and the topic in particular. The scope of the content to be transacted to the learner, the context in which learning is taking place, another needs, abilities and learning difficulties of the learners. So these are all should be kept in mind while writing the learning objectives. Understanding how to develop learning objectives will help you to structure teaching, learning and the assessment processes and optimize learning. So furthermore, classifying the objectives will help you to focus on various aspects of students' learning and the knowledge and cognitive process dimensions, about which we shall discuss in the next session. Learning objectives should be a line with three major components of teaching learning process: the objective, assessment and teaching learning activities. So now let's understand the dimensions of learning objectives. Teaching learning objectives, objectives and assessment just we discussed. Components of teaching learning process are consisted with each other. Whether the objectives are realized or not is known by assessment of learners. Accordingly, teaching learning activities are modified to realize the objective. The three components are consistent with each other. So first of all, the teaching learning process, which is consisting of n number of objectives. Those objectives are achieved or not, how the teacher will understand? Through assessment. Assessment of whom? The learners. Then accordingly, after the assessment, teacher will understand the activities which should be modified for the better understanding of the students. So these three are the very important components, complement with each other. Now let's understand features of well-developed objectives. A well-written or planned objectives can be easily understood by the learners as well as the teachers. Learners can foresee what is expected from them as a result of teaching learning process and can negotiate with the teachers regarding it. Other teachers can discuss with you and provide suggestions also. You should keep in mind certain focus points for writing learning objectives as depicted below. Writing learning objectives, let's understand, be learner centered. The first point should be learner centered. That means the learner should be in the focus. Whatever learning objectives are written, learner should be in the focus. Then be explicit and understandable. Obviously, whatever learning objectives are written, they should be explicit and understandable by the teacher and also the learner. Facilitate getting learning evidences. That means whatever the learning objectives are written, learning evidences should be there. That means if these learning objectives are written, what to be fulfilled from the learners, that should be understood. Then be observable by observing performance of learners. Obviously, the teacher always observe whether the learners are able to understand whatever topics are taught to them. Then what are the features of these learning objectives? Let's understand. Learning objectives should reflect what the learners will do, rather what the teacher will do, obviously. So first one is proper use of words indicating learning process provides clarity and understanding of a learning objectives. Then learners can be actively engaged in deciding learning objectives and extent of their performance can be negotiated with them. Learning objectives can be changed or modified depending upon the needs of the learners. Then a deep understanding of the contents of the social sciences is one of the most important requirements for writing learning objectives. Learning objectives are endpoints of possible achievements. These are specific, immediate and attainable goals. They vary from subject to subject. Now let's conclude this topic. Learning objectives for the unit should be comprehensive enough to include acquisition of knowledge, understanding, application and skills of social science processes, as well as problem solving, critical and creative thinking, communication, research and the context of disciplines. It should provide opportunities for leading experiences with concrete materials through activities and projects, carrying out investigation and validation of knowledge for the formation of the concepts in social sciences. So we come to the end of this session. Thanks for your attention and time. As motivation, please do like, share, subscribe and comment below. Happy learning.